I think 4 seconds good. So, welcome back, my friends. Hello, welcome to the Dinosaur Omelet Thursday Night Live. You can introduce yourself first.
Hi, I'm Angela.
And I'm the husband, Christopher. Hello, I say my name first. Was that a change up?
Sure.
That was a change up. Hi guys, welcome. Oh, you know what? The first thing I'd like to do is we've got a bunch of new people who subscribed who might be in here. So if you're a new subscriber, muchas gracias. Thank you for subbing us, and we hope the information is useful and of value. The internet is filled to the brim with, useless garbage, entertainment. So we try to provide some useful stuff here. So welcome. Thanks for coming in. Tonight's subject is going to be the layered food system, which is a form of permaculture, which we'll get into that in just a minute. And we're going to talk about that in the context of our homesteads or small farmettes, whatever we're doing to be productive food makers. Yes? So a little bit about us. If you're new here, so we're small. Yeah, I always do this. Why don't you tell them the story?
Well, we're a small hatchery. We focus on jumbo quail because they're just really great, productive birds with meat and eggs. They're easy to raise and they grow quickly. They lay eggs very fast, between 6 and 8 weeks, and then you can also process them for meat around 8 weeks. Yeah, and then we also encourage people to become more self-sufficient using different types of animals, plants, and we just try to encourage and share what we do here, share our knowledge, and
hopefully you guys are. Yeah, we really, I think the root of it is to encourage everybody.
Hi, Susan.
Hey, Susan, thanks for stopping in. Yeah, our main goal is to encourage you guys. So, this is we do put a lot of work into our weekly live videos to hopefully get out some good information and, again, encouragement and answer questions. So if you guys have any questions or comments, even if it's after this live, stick them in the box and we'll be happy to answer them and get to them, especially if they're quail questions. We've been doing that for a few years and helped many, many people start their own food system with quail. And quail can be a magnificent part of your food layering system. Okay?
Yeah, for sure.
So I think we'll go into that. I want to get into the philosophy of it first. For most of the people who I think subscribe to us or stop in here, they're homesteaders. They're especially like first timers, first generation. They haven't been doing this generationally, or they may have a limited background. And the philosophy that a lot of the homesteaders or farmettes or whoever it is, even if it's hobby food producers, there's a philosophy of self-sufficiency, okay, and limited outside necessary resources, like limited resources from the outside. So a lot of people want to have that self-sufficient production at home, and of course, while maintaining quality of life and health and all these other wonderful benefits that come along with learning how to produce your own food. That's mostly who we deal with, I think.
Yeah.
A lot of everybody who's coming in here. So within that community, everybody's very familiar with the word, with permaculture. If you're not familiar with permaculture, I'm not going to get in depth into permaculture because it's basic, fundamentally speaking. A regenerative, sustainable food production, animal production layout. So, I'm losing my head. I was in the sun all day. So when you're doing permaculture is your planning. It's a scientific planning method to set up a regenerative site, which you may be, motorcycle in the background, or you may be expanding out within different zones within your permaculture site that you're developing it. But the key component to that is planning. Okay, planning, and it's the same with the food layering system. Food layering system is a component of permaculture, which requires planning, and planning requires what we always like to talk about, which is, starts with an O.
An O?
Yeah, our objectives.
Oh, I was going to say goal setting.
Yeah, same thing. Same thing. So having goals and objectives before you're starting your food layering program. Would you like to talk a little bit about that? Because I've been blabbering a lot.
Well, yeah, I like to think of if I like to kind of think about people who are new, maybe getting started with setting up their food system or their little, maybe you don't have a lot of space, or maybe you do have a lot of space, but you're starting like from scratch. And yeah, so like we mentioned earlier, we were talking about the jumbo quail because they're a really good source of eggs and meat that can be raised in a smaller space and very productive. So let's say if you're starting with something like quail, jumbo quail, then you know get established with whatever you're starting with, and then you start looking into, well, what's the next thing I can add to my system that's going to produce foods, and maybe that's like meat rabbits, something like that. And also at the same time, maybe a garden, or you're starting to grow plants, vegetables.
Yeah, a key component to all this, though, is that your food systems, with the animals, the garden, is that they're interacting,
benefit.
they're synergistically producing where you're having minimal waste. You want to have a net gain positive, essentially. You're not going to have a net gain loss. So you want to have a net positive gain, and not a loss. And you do that through, again, proper management and planning with your food layering system. You don't want to be, for example, a chicken. So when are we thinking of a chicken? Oh, I'm going to have chickens because I have eggs. Well, wait a minute. A chicken does a lot more stuff than lay eggs. People may not be aware of, and I'm just using this as a simple example, as something implemented into a food layering system, so you kind of understand what I'm getting at as we further discuss this. So the chicken isn't just laying eggs. The chicken does work too. The chicken's scratching, pecking, all right? So they're taking care of pests potentially in a grazing field. They're clipping grass so they can be used as grazers to manage an area. They can be rotated to use their manure to fertilize areas. You can take their manure and put it into the compost too, so now you have another use for those chickens. One of the things I do is, and I was talking about this before we started this, I'll take out my biomass from the garden, like the clippings from the top, the stalks. I try to leave the roots in, and I'll talk about that later too. But anyway, I'll take the garden stalks and toss them down to the ducks, and the ducks will eviscerate that stuff, quack it up, and break it down, and I use it as mulch. And then I'll harvest that. So the ducks did work. They weren't just sitting around quacking. So part of that food layering system is now I'm having this circular, I guess, synergy going between the garden, the ducks, and then the produce from the garden. We can grow something to feed the little critters. Mostly it's for us, but I might give carrot tops to the bunnies or something. Just, it's something simple over a small homestead. But that's just a simple example that I hope makes sense to you guys as we further discuss this. So when you're thinking of your goal setting, and this is really something, if you're doing a homestead, especially first time, or maybe even doing this for a couple of years, but you want to expand, it would behoove you to speak to somebody, to sit down and talk to somebody with some experience to help plan this, because there is a lot of information in setting up a really efficient food layering system. And it's not going to be perfect the first time you do it. You know, this is all learning processes. Mm-hmm. But understanding your goals, firstly, is hugely important. I would always stress that, because you do not want to go into a situation excited. It's like buyer's remorse. Seeing a shiny sports car, going crazy and buying a thing, and I'm like, I've got payments for the rest of my life. So you don't want to go into your new property and just start plopping things everywhere, because in your head it looks good. You know, proper planning and strategy for these things is really going to benefit you. You know, maybe where's your garden going? You want it there because it looks nice outside of the window, but in fact, it would be much more beneficial because of the access to water and sunlight in another region. It's just a simple example, but that's the example I'm giving because of the importance of planning. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Gosh, there's a lot of information, but it's simple stuff. And the reason I give these examples, like as far as teaching goes, is to have some cognizant point of reference. So there's that connection, not just you have to plan. Well, here's an example as to why it would make sense to not just jump in doing something, but really plan it out. Mm-hmm. And in the food layering system, so what critters do we have?
So, of course, we have the quail, we have meat rabbits, and we have Muscovy ducks. They have a nice red meat. They're kind of like a mini beef cow. We have chickens. Is that pretty pretty much it as far as, and of course we have a garden.
And we have a garden, of course, because
Yeah.
I do the garden. The garden's the work. So the garden would not exist because we have what you would call horrible soil. So in gardens, and I don't want to give too many stupid little, what do you call these, anecdote examples, but gardens are, so we have horrible soil, but gardens are soil. Gardens aren't plant. You know, you talk to a good gardener, they're going to tell you it's the living soil that you're tending to. So you can get a huge yield out of your garden by going and buying fertilizer. What is it, the 10-10-10 mix fertilizer, and dumping it on your ground. Well, that's not sustainable. So one of the components of permaculture, or like we're doing our food layer system, is sustainability and regenerative ability, you know, regeneration of your assets. Chickens hatch, ducks can hatch, you can replace critters, fields grow back, they turn over, you introduce new nutrients to the soil. And with your garden, you want to have that as it's a living organism. The dirt is a living organism, essentially.
Yeah, so if you
which
have
is feeding the food system.
if
Sorry.
you have rabbits, then their manure, the rabbits' manure, can be placed right into the garden. It doesn't have to be. It's not a hot manure. You don't have to wait on it, and so that's. If you have a small garden going, and let's say you have the meat rabbits going too, then you can grow a little bit of like lettuce or spinach or something that, or if you're going to be trimming them, then you can be giving that to the rabbits, and then the rabbits' manure into the garden, and then the chickens and poultry, theirs can be going into the compost pile to.
Yeah, remember, guys, this is a hugely important thing, and I love talking about this because I love nature. Mother Nature is a magnificent, magnificent creation, and it does all of this work for you. You know, you're supposed to, when you're planning and putting together your little homestead or whatever kind of food system you're putting together, these organisms are doing all of this work. You don't want to be doing the labor. You're having the critters naturally function, which is performing all these really wonderful tasks, which make your homestead regenerative and self-sustaining. Literally could talk about this for many dozens of hours. Well, I couldn't, but a more professional, what do you call it, expert in this area could, you know. And there's many experts online who can talk about this for many, many hours. But we have a lot of experience anyway. But yeah, proper planning with these creatures and letting them perform the duties that biologically they're good at. If you know how to harness those duties, they're going to do an abundance of work for you. And if you manage properly, you really won't have any waste.
And at the end of the season, when you're finished with your garden, you can release your chickens or move your chicken pen into the garden area so that they're in there for a good bit, and they'll scratch and churn that soil up for you and loosen it as well. But yeah, an important thing too with a food layering system, you're thinking about food production, and we've already just discussed how everything works with complements each other. But the objective in producing different types of animals or plants that will benefit you and your family, as far as having different types of foods available to eat, rather than just having one thing. So after you get established and start learning and do well with the first thing that you're working with, because you don't want to be overwhelmed, then you start looking into, well, what's the next type of food source I can implement in the property that you have, and your the ability of how you can handle and what you can take care of. And there's lots of different small animals and also different types of plants that can be added throughout the growing season. Different plants that prefer temperatures, spring, summer, fall, and then even winter. There's some things depending on how you grow it. So yeah, the food layering system is great because then you're implementing different types of animals that you can draw from food with meat or eggs, and then the gardening.
Yeah, and then they're all feeding each other too, in one way or another. I mean, the ducks are feeding the rabbits. And what the how's that working? That doesn't make any sense. Well, the ducks, like we said, they're an intermediary. They're breaking down organic matter, which is going back into this garden, or it's becoming compost. And that's contributing to the output and the biomass that's being output from that soil, which is going to feed some other animal. And then the animal fertilizer, manure is being put in the compost. So I think all living organisms and everything we experience comes from the sun. So it starts there with the plants. You know, the food chain. Remember that? Like in elementary school, they showed the little plant and the bigger creature and so on. So the food chain's starting over at the sun. And so it all goes back to the soil so the sun can feed and continually feed. So that's really, I think, a key cornerstone to your food layering system. If you have a garden, I mean, it's phenomenal. Like if you're doing animals, you absolutely should start trying to garden. I'm not a good gardener, you know, I know a little bit. You learn more each year, but it's, yeah, hugely beneficial. It's healthy, of course, and that's another big thing that we promote is taking care of your health. You know, that's why we grow our own foods, get out of the grocery store mentality. But yeah, man, if you're keeping animals, incorporating plant life, even if you don't have space for a garden, if you can do something to incorporate plant life with these animals and start that cycle, it's really an amazing thing. And that's part of that food layering.
And working with the space you have, you can get very creative. If you have a small footprint that you're working with, if you're thinking about a garden, then you can start thinking of vertical. What plants grow up? What kind of plants will do good in like hanging baskets? And there's the different types of plants that will grow underneath taller plants, so you can really utilize
for
the
sure.
space.
Companion plants, so you can grow like you hear the food forests. Food forests are interesting. I didn't want to talk about that too much because, like I said, I'm not a great gardener, but I understand what food forests are. It functions like a tree canopy or a forest. You have your upper canopy or the high growing vegetation, the mid-level vegetation, and the ground growing productive plants, with whatever that might be, fruit-bearing vegetables, pollinators. But each area in your forest is contributing to the health of the entirety, and they're all producing something. And again, when it's fall, harvest time, and some of this stuff is croaking out, like scraps that you have, you don't throw that away. All that stuff is usable. Okay, that's very valuable stuff. It's the sun put a lot of work into growing it. The plant was grown. Well, not the sun. Oh, hey, Fire Dad.
Hey.
One of our friends came from the Netherlands. Good to see you. We're talking about making food again. And if you guys, again, if anybody has any questions, drop them down in the comments, and we'll be happy to answer them.
Yeah.
Okay.
What was I gonna say?
It was food forest yapping.
Yeah.
I'll give some examples of stuff. Like this is important too. When we're thinking about like food layering, the reason I was really discussing the garden and the mulch and the chicken crap and the manure was because I want you guys, if you haven't really investigated this, to think a little more than one-to-one direct. Like chickens make eggs, you know, ducks make eggs, rabbits make meat, or whatever it is. Because they actually can be utilized for multiple applications, and complement each other. That's what food layering is. That's what really permaculture is where you're setting up these systems to where they're codependent and they work together and they feed each other and they regenerate and they're regenerative. That's the important thing. Like these things don't just happen and then you got to start all over again. And that's why this is very appealing to the homesteading community, because homesteaders are very self-sufficient minded people, and setting up a proper food layering program by definition is a self-sufficient mechanism, because all these things are working together to feed each other and function off of one another and regenerate. And hello, Kelly. Thanks for stopping in. You don't need to apologize for coming late. You weren't scheduled. You can do whatever you want. So
You were gonna say some examples, but there's there are more animals, and different things that you can contribute and add. Like there are goats and sheep and pigs, and they all benefit in different ways.
Probably the greatest animal we have for our little homestead here is my pig. She does a wonderful job. She snorts. She patrols the grounds. If there's any, to keep pests away, she eats up all of the. So that's a benefit.
She eats up what?
She eats the dropping, like the food particles on the ground. So we don't have any bears around here.
She knocks over food containers to eat more of it.
Had to go feed the critters and then the kids, and we're behaving as per usual. That's part of being a fam.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I was going to mention, which you're not thinking of as food, but contributes to your food, is rainwater. Rainwater harvesting or catchment systems. Now, she's a good pig though. So the rain catching, is the United States still going psychotic with this? I know, like,
Oh, with the water.
don't collect
barrels.
water. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into that.
We're referring to, there are certain like city areas or even like, maybe
States.
even suburb. Yeah, that there was some
Don't
sort of
catch your
control about having rain
Water.
barrels
Yeah,
on
catching rain.
your spouts. Anyway, I don't know.
So, anyway, a lot of people do catch water. They'll put spouts on their chicken coop roofs or
Because
on their
there
house
are
roofs,
people
on their barn
who
roofs.
have to pay for water. You know, I mean, different wherever you
Yeah.
you may be in an area where you have to pay for your water usage. But even if you don't, it is good to you know utilize barrels and such and catch water that's. Especially when the seasons are getting hotter into the summer, and if you have barrels that maybe are in a raised area, maybe your garden's lower than the barrel, you can use irrigation. Or even use a spigot or a hose or something, make your life a little easier.
Or if you want to make your life very difficult, use an old-timey pump well like I do. So that's the important thing about like your permaculture planning, pre-planning when you're doing your setup. Like, where's your water source? Is it accessible? Do you need to put a big old tank in, to have that water accessible?
And same thing with the animals, with making your rounds to make sure everybody has water. How easy is it to take care of everybody? Then that goes into what Christopher was mentioning in the beginning, which was planning and figuring out your property, the layout of your property, and placing things in a way that makes sense, good flow for caring for things, and how things work together.
I missed a comment. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, it's Marissa. She should have come in as a special guest star because she's.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Professional with
Solar-powered pond pumps work well on barrel irrigation systems.
Oh, cool.
You see, she's the brilliant one.
Yeah.
You're the expert.
Yeah, feel free to mention anything that comes to mind.
Yes. Thank you, Marcia. That's true. Yeah, there's a lot of techniques, applications, and strategies one can implement into their little homestead.
Yeah.
Get on here, get on the YouTube or on the internet, and make sure you get qualified people. Though there are some goofballs, but there are some people with great information to start even inspiring you. Maybe not just looking for ideas, but watching a couple things to get an idea in your head. Like, oh, I can do that. I wasn't even thinking about that, and that really happens. Yeah. Or talk to people who, if you have friends or associates, somebody who's already doing something, speak with them, see what they're doing, maybe get inspired, and you come up with your own kind of idea for your place.
So yeah, with the different examples, but thinking of plants in the garden, there are different plants you can plant lower or around your vegetables that might be flowering plants and they'll attract the pollinators. There might be some plants that you can plant to repel pests.
Now the food, I want to say, like, this food layered system, I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning, a couple other people stopped in. So it's like a subgenre, is that how you say it? Genre, it's a French word, a subgenre of permaculture. So it's a component, it's a type of permaculture, but it's focused on agricultural output, food output. So your food layering system, it's still going to have all these, synergies in the system, like a permaculture system, where they're feeding each other and they're cyclical and they're regenerative. But in this instance, we're focused on food output, like what can we generate for food. So that was our goal here at our little homestead, was food generation. Like, we have our meat animals, our ducks, our chickens.
Kelly was saying she went crazy planting basil this year to help with flies.
Stinky fly traps still work better though. Yes, that's true. There's a lot of companion plants and pest repellent plants that, again, that's a skill. Learn about and stick them in the garden and see what happens. Gardening's fun. It's labor intensive, but the reward's great. And I'm one of those people who cooks a lot, so I do like the output of the garden. But it's a lot of work. But there's a lot of what I like about the garden is the biology of the soil. So the soil's really magnificent, and a garden is soil. Anybody will tell you that. I guess any competent person. It's the soil that you're growing, that you're feeding, that living organism, that substrate. It's really amazing. And when you learn about it, it's inspiring as you learn about it, especially if you're kind of nerdy like me. You're like, ooh, well, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
You know, learning about the different plants and the organisms that associate themselves with those plants so that they function simply like the nitrogen fixing critters.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows what nitrogen fixing is. Do you know what this is? Nitrogen fixing plants?
Might as well go ahead and mention.
But that's an interesting thing, right? You plant, the legume, the little bacteria in the soil are processing the nitrogen in the air that the plants can't really use, or the plants can get access to it, and they store it up and they croak out, and then it goes back in the soil. It's really, really fascinating. And the plants are feeding the bacteria. So these things, even like I was saying earlier, the natural world is a magnificent machine. And this work, the work will be done for you. And nature, even here, like you have no idea, it's underground. All this work is being done to produce a vibrant, living soil, which is the basis of everything else in your food program. Because, anyway, from my perspective, because it's all going back to that soil where you're regenerating and growing, and all that biomass and that food production is going throughout the homestead, and you're reusing it. It's not getting thrown away. You know, I use all of the stuff that comes out of the garden. We're either eating it, processing it, goes to a critter, or it's being regenerated into compost back in in that soil. Make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
Somebody
Kelly
say
mentioned
something.
something.
Bow. I added comfrey in this year. Excellent. I added. Did I add anything new?
I'm not sure.
I don't think I had anything new. I like the greens. I grow mustard greens, collard greens, kale greens, turnip greens. That's the other thing, guys. Learn about the components of the animals or plants that you're harvesting. Because, again, you don't want to have waste. You want to have a net gain positive. You don't have a net loss. So, our net gain positive, we're using as much as we can from each of our critters, if possible, and from the plants before we put them into the compost zone. That's a major component to your homestead journey, I think. Self-sufficiency is, what do you call it? Saving, or not wasteful. Mm-hmm. I don't know, I was in the sun all day today, so my brain's fried.
And even the compost pile itself is something to think about in like tending to it. Susan, my comfrey didn't come back this year, but I have goji berry shrubs galore. Ooh, that's awesome.
Goji berries.
Love to get some of that.
Why, we talked to a good friend of ours about eating goji berries. Thusly, he cured his blindness eating them. Remember?
Yeah, I remember him talking about it. Yeah.
Now, is that true or not? I don't know, but he sure swore by it. So
yeah, they're very good for you, the goji berries.
All of these things are good for you. All of these plants, if they're real plants, not those junky grocery store plants, the real plants that you grow in your dirt, ooh-wee, they're filled with all kinds of phytonutrients and phytochemicals that your body uses. In fact, there are so many compounds, we don't know what these compounds do in a plant. We do know that they're synergistic, that they work together, but there's many, many hundreds of chemicals, phytochemicals, and even a piece of lettuce. We don't know what they all do. Some may be very beneficial, some may be vestigial, some you don't know. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, so with the compost pile, it would be good to think about adding critters to. Kelly, I don't know if you have any flies around your compost pile at all, or if they're just like everywhere, but black soldier fly larvae are really great to add to your compost pile if you don't already have them naturally, because they are in the environment, depending on temperature and where you are. But the larvae, they're actually technically called maggots, but larva is a nicer word. they eat they compost. They eat the material in the compost pile. They'll eat that degrading material. They eat things that you throw in there. Comfrey is great for pulling nutrients out of the soil, much with the
mulch with the leaves.
Mulch with the leaves.
That's
Yeah.
Marissa.
Yeah.
She's brilliant.
Yes. And the black soldier fly larvae, they will secrete something that will repel flies because flies are their natural competitor. So they do help with keeping flies at bay, but also they do churn the compost and then they eat it. So they help it degrade faster into that really good soil. So they're really great. They're a great insect to have. The adult flies, they look like a wasp, a black wasp, but they don't have a mouth because when they're in that state of life, they're not alive very long. They're just alive for a couple days.
They never get any pie.
So
they never have a sandwich.
they're harmless to people. But yeah.
But they're fabulous workers.
Yeah,
they do
really
their
are.
job.
And then you could even harvest them
What happened?
for chickens. Her mind blown.
Yeah, well, about your bugs?
Yeah, they're amazing bugs. You can even harvest them for your birds.
Yeah, you can feed them to the critters.
Once they're getting to this stage. So you can buy them on Amazon, buy 100 or several hundreds or 1,000 at a time.
You could probably call one of your farmer friends.
And you just dump them in.
You don't need a lot.
You just dump them in the compost pile and they'll burrow down and they'll just start to go into work. And anyway, you could even throw like stuff from your kitchen scraps in there too. They'll eat that as well. But they'll start out small and then they'll get bigger and bigger. And once they're about 1 inch long, then they're going to start migrating to the surface because they're about to become their adult form as the fly, which it doesn't look anything like a fly, which is nice. But and if you have them in some sort of container, some people will put composting material in like a tub, and then they'll make like a ramp system along the edges of the tub, where the larvae will naturally start inching up the ramp system because they instinctively want to go up. Then people will have them from the ramp go into a tube and they fall into like a gallon, an empty gallon or a bucket. So they just harvest themselves.
You
and
can
then you
find
can
that on the YouTube.
Yeah, there's lots of YouTube videos. You can feed them to your poultry. They love them. They're really good. There's black soldier fly larvae.
But that's actually a really great microsystem.
Yeah. Wild birds have discovered them and are enjoying a banquet. Yeah.
Yeah, they do like them. But that's like a micro ecosystem because it's the box. It's going to be in a giant, we made one, but they're in a Tupperware, what do you call them, a tote?
Yeah.
So that's sealed off from the outside environment. So it's own kind of like self-contained mini ecosystem.
Yeah.
But even in that mini ecosystem, these things are regenerating and growing.
When the weather turns cold, then any critters that are still in the larval state will burrow down further and they'll hibernate. They just kind of like freeze in that state, and they'll stay down low where they're safe from the really cold temperatures. So then they'll revive when the weather gets warm again.
Yeah, if you get online, if you have birds or compost, you're online, you probably have heard somebody talk about these things before because they're pretty magnificent.
Oh wow.
What did Kelly say? I can't see that, man, and gave away my entire compost pile, so starting new again. That's okay.
Yeah.
Don't feel bad. Start new again. I'm sure you can find plenty of stuff to throw in that pile. Take all the garden, take all the kitchen organic matter.
I haven't done that yet, says Susan. Mine are in open compost pile. Do you have black soldier flies? I mean, are you saying that you haven't harvested them yet? And you have them in your compost pile?
If you have them, they're good.
That's what we haven't. We kind of tried harvesting them, but then my attention got pulled away. So now, at this point, I use the black soldier flies strictly for taking care of our compost pile and, like keeping away flies and helping break it down, which obviously helps with the smell as well. Maybe in the future I might use them again for the protein source for the birds, but they do love them. I mean, you can go into Tractor Supply or order on Chewy or Amazon dried soldier fly larvae as treats. People do all the time.
Try. No, so Lots of interesting stuff. Is there anything else pertaining to? See, this should be a 17-hour long video with about 10 different speakers because
That'd be a course.
it actually be much longer than that because there's so much information.
They're in my compost pile. Okay.
Oh,
I
okay.
am mentally working on starting a closed system. Cool.
Very nice.
Yeah. If you're doing a deep litter method, would they survive being with the birds? Yes, I have had.
That's a good question. I
Yeah.
like that question because you're not thinking about that.
My chicken, one of the coops we have one of our big houses is on the ground with wire on against the ground, and then I put a bunch of layers of bedding throughout the season. And I did notice at one point in the spring, cleaning up from the coldest months going into spring, I found black soldier fly larvae in their hibernated state in there, and they were perfectly fine. So yeah, they definitely, as long as the birds don't find them, they'll be safe in there.
Which is good because they're breaking down any material that could potentially become, what do you call it, toxic or bacterial.
Yeah,
Infectious.
that's true.
Infectious. That's the word I'm thinking of.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah, that is a good question.
Yeah.
And also, what you were saying about the deep litter,
Mm-hmm.
well, that deep litter, that's some very good compost. Because
Yeah.
the chickens are turning it into compost just in that area. So that stuff gets harvested. I just took some out, last week and built a new garden bed.
Mm-hmm.
Carrot patch, I'm sorry, my carrot patch. So my carrot patch last week wasn't so nice. Carrots were gnarled.
He was
So
trying to find special material from around our property that would suffice his
To make it-
carrots and
Well,
make
you
them
know,
happy.
carrots like nice, airy,
Yeah.
fluffy soil. So I wanted to use something from around the yard. So I used the chicken mulch. Chicken mulch that's a couple of years old, I guess. It was on the outside of the chicken patch. And man, I wanted to eat that soil. I triple sifted it. So I took out the big pebbles first. And then I took out even the tiny pebbles. That thing is nothing but pure, delicious carrot dirt. And I'm going to be eating a lot of carrots I'm going to turn orange this year. Because of the beta carotene. And I love carrots. Carrots are great. And garden carrots, world of difference.
He does eat the carrots like Bugs Bunny. He just eats them.
Talk about getting stared at. I mean, I could be drinking a bottle
And he'll
of
do it in
booze.
public. Yeah.
Like I get stared at for eating a carrot. Whatever. Okay. So anything else important to mention for this basic overview of food layer system? I guess really going back to the beginning, you want to be sustainable, regenerative, and efficient. There's resiliency in your system, in your food layering system, and it all starts with objectives. Right? What were you saying? Goal setting? Yeah, goal setting, objectives, and proper planning. And I realize a lot of people watching this already have a lot of stuff set up. So like, oh, shut up, Chris. What are you talking?
Well,
If you could go back to the very beginning before we did anything,
Yep, everybody always.
you do something different.
Exactly.
But you want to plan and modify, and it's a learning curve with everything. So you're learning as you go. So you can plan and change things, and that's the nature of grand goals. You have major objectives, and along the way you have minor goals that you're trying to achieve that big objective. Well, guess what? You don't have to always do that plan exactly as it was because you learn something new. It's like, or maybe just my philosophy changed, or maybe whatever it is, my big objective changed. I no longer want to have output of food. I don't need that anymore. I'm changing this to a textile output or something else, whatever you're doing. But goal is very important because it's going to keep you on track. It keeps you from going wacky because you get stressed out, man.
Yeah, and realizing like where you're at, how much time and energy you have, space you have, and not doing too much too fast. So that's part of your goals, your planning, and keeping yourself, pacing yourself so that you're also learning. There's much to learn, but you don't also. Some people kind of get paralysis with what is that?
Analysis paralysis. You
So,
think too much.
Yeah.
Let me read that here. I think one of the most important lessons I have learned along the way is sometimes, no matter what you do, Mother Nature has other plans. That is so true.
Yeah. It's very true.
Yeah, gosh, adapting to, especially negative situation, adapting to a situation is difficult, It's difficult. And what's the best part about difficult situations is usually everybody splits and you're on your own.
Mm.
Like that's when, what they say, wheat from the chaff.
Mm.
That's when
Yeah.
and I hope everybody out there, if you do go through some sort of challenge, that you have decent human beings who care about you for you and nothing more, and are there for you because of you intrinsically, inherently, of what you possess as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
Low expectations for output, high expectations for learning. Here, right on. I guess that's how I usually go in.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm like,
with
I
the
don't
garden.
expect, I go in with low expectations
Mm-hmm.
because anything good happens. I'm
He's
like, yes,
pleasantly surprised.
that's awesome. All right.
But
And then lots of learning. I wish I would have met her. I never met Marissa in person
yeah,
when you
I
delivered.
met you.
I'm sorry. We
But
would have
yeah,
talked for a while, I bet,
probably yeah.
about gardens. And
With what Susan was also saying, to difficult times or shifts, like it's for us living creatures, humans and animals alike, and plants, change can be difficult. Major or a sudden abrupt change can be difficult. But so with everything we're talking about ultimately health and wellness, because you're talking about food and growing things and balance and all that stuff, and you obviously want to take care of yourself and stay encouraged. And whenever challenging things happen, it's a wonderful opportunity for growth. So often we may press through difficult times, and then after the fact we'll be like, man, that was so hard, so frustrating, and like I just wanted to give up. But then you push through, and then you realize like all the stuff you learned through it and how you grew as a person and your character. And then also just problem solving and how you can shift your focus. If there's like a huge obstacle suddenly that happens, then there are other methods, to doing something, or maybe a new focus. That there's lots of ways to produce food. There's lots of options. So that's a big thing that we did discuss, is that with this food layered system, permaculture, there's all sorts of options. And the different things with the plants and the different types of animals, they all take, a certain kind of attention or energy to tend to and care for. So if difficult times happen, or there's a sudden change, stay encouraged. Tune into people who you are encouraged by, you're inspired by, and think outside the box, and don't be discouraged, because there's always another way. There's
Yeah, like what she said, and I guess we're going into the Deep Thoughts by Jack Handy. That's from Saturday Night Live. But it's important because this is important to me. Like, this is really the most important thing to me, is the human being. Like, that's why I do this stuff, is because the most important thing to me, I said this before on here, when I croak out, I hope I affect, and I don't want any credit, I just want one other human being to have a better quality of life and understanding of self. And through these difficult challenges, and it seems the worse they are, the more we can grow, potentially. The more potential we have to grow. So much so that when we get to the other side, we realize we're a completely different person than who we thought we were. Mm-hmm. And we understand who we are. And we become resilient through, hopefully, intermittent challenges and not catastrophic challenges. But people do come across catastrophic challenges.
Yeah.
And, I can't, unless we have experience of that challenge or that suffering, I give my empathy. I hope you get through that, but we'll never understand it. I can't take that away from somebody, like their experience. I can't say, oh, I know how that must be, or that must be, it must be hard, but I have no idea until I experience it. So hopefully, if you do find yourself in a place of challenge, even if it's something that's not life-defeating, like, oh my goodness, something came in and ate all my chickens. Mm-hmm. That's really upsetting. Mm-hmm. it's not going to push you over your edge, probably.
Or even dealing with sickness. Maybe you have a lot of different types of animals, and there's an illness going through, maybe, like people with goats or whatever. You know,
Yeah.
larger animals.
You gotta
that
get
can
them
be
up
really
cold.
challenging.
Yeah, it is. But it's a time for growth and reassessment. And key component to homestead or self-sufficiency is resiliency, like being able to face challenges and come up with a plan to battle challenges. I've had challenges. I mean, I thank God they haven't been catastrophic. They may have been catastrophic for somebody else, but you know. Hey, it's Andy.
Hi, Andy.
What's up, buddy? But yeah, like we go through our challenges. This kind of thing, this lifestyle practice, it's not about making food. Like, at least to me, it's not. It's not about having an animal. You're creating, this interactive experience. It's a growth experience.
Quality of life.
Quality of life. It's a teaching experience. You're showing others something to give them a sense of self. To me, it's a very, like, everything goes back to simple fundamentals. Like, yeah, I'm growing a carrot. Who cares I'm growing a carrot? It's not about the carrot. It's the process, it's the production, and it's the understanding of, hey, I care about me. I value myself enough that I'm going to grow a little carrot and eat that little carrot, and I know that little carrot is good for me. I took care of myself. It's not about a stupid carrot. I mean, I enjoy doing that, for sure, but there's much deeper reasons in the things we do, and I always encourage people to investigate, why are you doing it? And you keep asking why. Why are you doing this? And this is simple because, but there's a much deeper because underneath of it all. And that's where our goals come from. And we may not even be aware of them. Many of the goals that we set are based on things that we're not consciously aware of. And they kind of surface as something else. They manifest as another. I'm not going to get too deep into psych talk, but you think about it in your own experience through life. I'm sure every single person knows what I'm talking about. You know, we go through something. We set an objective unconsciously based on that event. And we pursue it, not realizing that's what's driving us to pursue our goal. You talk to me about this all the time. Fixing people, like, fixing a problem, addressing issues. I hope that wasn't too preachy, but
No, I don't think so.
I think it makes some sense.
Yeah.
And that's that. So my heart is with you guys. I believe we're a triune creature. Take care of our mind, our body, and our spirit. And to you atheists, I'm sorry, but I take care of my spirit, and that thing's doing pretty good. I try to take care of all three, and none of us, I don't think any human being's ever going to take care of all three of those components to 100% satisfaction, or thusly we would be perfect.
Yeah.
And thank goodness we're not perfect, I always say, because we'd all be identical. We'd be the exact same thing. So we can't be perfect. We have to have our flaws and our differences and our broken components to make us the wonderful individuals that we are.
Well, and those components that creates, the learning and the love, like learning to love, and I don't know, like we learn so much being humans and everything.
I
that
like
we
being
do.
human. I'm coming back as a whale next time, but I like being a human.
He always talks about being a fish because they just swim.
They just sit there. They're not doing anything to do this.
They don't have
go
to worry
back.
about anything.
They sit under their rock. They come out and they go back under their rock.
Like, I wish I was a
I
fish.
wish I was a fish.
But anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I hope you guys, I guess that's about that.
Yeah.
And I hope this talk was somewhat useful to somebody out there. I didn't go very much in depth because it's a huge subject, a layering food system, a layered food system. My objective is agricultural output, and I want to do a layered food system. Whew, that's a huge thing.
Watch out for the bigger fish.
Yeah, I know. So, but yeah, the layered food system is it's a huge subject to tackle, like in great detail, because there's so many different things to talk about. I mean, literally, there could be hundreds of things you could discuss that you could implement into a layered food system or your permaculture system.
Yeah.
You need to go, or I'm sorry, I don't like to tell anybody you need to do anything. You don't need to do anything. I would suggest having goals, having an objective, and planning accordingly. And like Kelly, like you said, if you're still watching, you got rid of your compost pile. Okay, great. Now you can replan, like what went right with it, what went wrong with it, what would you do in the future. Simple things. What can you do with that? And you can replan and like kind of strategize now and figure out how it could be most beneficial.
And if you're kind of like starting out, maybe if you have a few animals or some plants, and perhaps you're not too aware yet of all the possibilities just surrounding, the chickens or the rabbits or the ducks or the garden. Maybe your thoughts are turning now, and you can research the particular things that you have and see what else how else can they contribute to your system. And that might give you ideas about adding other things that work with what you already have, to help just develop that whole system that you have. And just a big thing though is to not overwhelm yourself. Learn before you go. Set your goals, plan things out, and then just one step at a time, and then you're going to have a nice system that complements each other and works well.
What I find interesting, because you said start slow, or don't go overboard. It really doesn't matter what level somebody's at. I see expert people still make the same beginner mistakes, and it's not uncommon. We just
get really excited.
Well, it's not even that. We get comfortable with what's going on or who we are, and then how did I do that?
Sometimes we forget about the process, like just a garden, for example. You plant the little seeds, they're little plants, and then further down, you're like, first you're like, this is gonna be great, envisioning those huge tomatoes, your zucchinis, everything, but then like things are going, and now it's like summer, it's drier, you're like, oh my gosh, I have to water these plants like every other day because it's so dry, and now the plants are getting really bushy, and I planted them too close together, and then the whole process might be a lot more than you anticipated. Well, the same thing with maybe if you have meat rabbits and you're like, I'm envisioning, filling your freezer with meat, if you're using the rabbits for meat. Well, you're breeding them, and you're like, oh my god, well, I have 3 females, 3 does. Let's just do all 3 of them, and you haven't done it yet. And now you have baby bunnies, and they're just so cute, and they're so tiny, and then they're, they have to grow out. And then all of a sudden you have a whole bunch of them, and maybe you kept them together too long, and maybe your processing date just got set back too far, and then boy bunnies and girl bunnies, and then some things happen, and then just like feeding them all, so it's just, everything starts small but can expand rapidly and in an unexpected way if you didn't think through the process. So you don't want to overwhelm yourself in that way.
Yeah, overproduction is definitely an issue. Yeah. That's definitely an issue, overproduction, because we talk to people with quail all the time. Yeah. They want to get 190 quail for 2-3 people, and they're way too many things. And that's just a very simple example, but they're doing overproduction. And then you have waste. Worse than waste, you have an investment to produce waste. That's the worst. It's okay if you're expecting X amount, but you get X plus 5. Okay, that's a bit much than I was expecting, but paying to have waste, that's terrible.
And if you're, for the rabbits, for example, if you're planting your garden, certain things in there that you're going to supplement your rabbits' food with, just to keep them happy and healthy, on top of the food that they're already having. But then all of a sudden you have a lot of babies growing out, and then their appetites are growing as they're growing, and suddenly you're paying a lot more for rabbit feed than you were anticipating at all. So now it's not balanced. So yeah.
But hopefully you're supplementing the rabbit feed with all the wonderful things you're growing in your food layering system.
But if you're doing it, if you're planning it, then you're gonna have ideally, it's good to have a doe pregnant and then offset another one that's pregnant too. That way you have 2 does with babies in case something happens to one of your does and she can't nurse her babies.
Yeah, if you guys want to see a video about that, that would be a cool video to make.
Yeah.
A meat rabbit video on how to they're simple.
They are.
They're simple. I think people are always they ask questions just because it's unfamiliar. Oh my God, they get scared. how do I do that? Could you teach me how to do rabbits? Yeah, sure. You take a male rabbit, you take a girl rabbit, you mix them together, you
There's a lot
throw them to the side
there's
for
a
a
lot
while,
of
and you got meat
videos.
coming out. You got little baby rabbits. You just take care of them till they're big. It's really simple.
And you can do rabbit tractors. There's a lot of things you can do.
Yeah, so a lot of this stuff, like I said at the beginning, like Mother Nature is a magnificent architect. She's designed so many beautiful things, and they all work. They work perfectly. I mean, they do. So nature works perfectly, and they work synergistically. And if you utilize how nature works, it'll do the work for you. And you have meat. What does he say? Not too preachy. We love you. I'm trying to grow my jowls so I can be more preachy. Like, I'll tell you what. Like that, you know how they shake and they give a good preaching face. But yeah, man, all of this stuff is biologically designed to do a lot of work that the human shouldn't be doing. We should be like the little micromanagers. We should be managing everybody. They already know what they're doing. They know their job. We just got to make sure they're doing their job appropriately. The dirt, the critters, the plants. Make sure everybody's working properly and put them in the offices they need to go in. And then they're going to be working together, doing that regenerative, self-sustaining output and a healthy, vibrant, living output, not something that's like sickly and choking along. You know, we look at, I forgot to mention this. This drives me nuts. This is why I like doing this stuff. You think about big agriculture. Sorry, big agriculture, if you're watching, which they're not, but if they were, I'd still tell you this. You go out to big agriculture in huge fields, well, what's the fields? Dead dirt that they have to amend with chemicals every single year, dumping onto that to get these plants to grow, which also need chemicals to survive. Man, talk about a way to wipe out the human species, relying on that as a food system. Does nobody see how inherently dangerous that is? I mean, that's horrible. So you could do like a normal thing that's been done for many, many thousands of years and let nature do the job. But that's kind of hard to do at scale. I understand big agri, you know, at that big scale. But, you know, we humans aren't that stupid. We're trained not to question stuff. But, you know, and I can sound crazy. I really don't care because I know this is correct because I'm not an idiot. And I think most of you guys realize this. When we destroy vast swaths of land, that's not good, okay? And it's not good to be eating food that comes from dead soil. Soil is what we're actually, you know, that's what we're tending to eat, is the living soil. So it's not good to kill that thing. And that's the beginning of an ecosystem, you know, an ecology. Ecologies are interconnected microcosms, each one. I remember, I'm going to tell you this one last story and I'll get out of here. I share mine because there's not much space to do much compost. Well, it's good.
Yeah.
You should ask for some output from whoever you're sharing with. That's part of what that's about. Bartering, hey. Okay, anyway, what was I going to say? Oh, to demonstrate the beauty of nature. So my kids, when they were babies, I was always with the kids. I take them out all the time. I like kids. So to get them interested in nature and to understand things are not what they look like on a macro scale, I'd always take them out to the forest. I love the woods. And say, look at the tree, baby. What is this? You know, she said, oh, it's a big tree, Daddy. You know, I say, look at this thing. Oh, it's a big tree, Daddy. He's like, it is, but it is not. I tell them it is and it's not. It's an entire universe. It's not just a tree. We have organisms living in the leaves, organisms living in the bark, organisms living down at the ground level and things underneath the ground, and they all feed each other and they all rely on each other. The mosses, the bacteria, the mushrooms, the fungus, the insects, the spiders, like all these things, and how they all live together in just one tree. And you know, you have all these many thousands of trees in the forest. But this was this ecosystem in this singular entity which fed the forest. And then we talk about like the roots talk to each other. Man, talk about wild stuff he thought was for the crazy hippies. No way, it's true. The plants communicate. They're talking through the roots. It's really phenomenal. So they're doing their job. So why, and that's another reason inherently, I said, do not kill the soil. Why would we kill the soil? This is the transmission, this medium of communication between all these organisms. Don't kill it. I'm going to start crying. But I don't eat that stuff, man. Keep your Doritos, keep your corn products, keep your corn oils, keep all that junk. I will eat my weird carrot and get stared at in public, and that's fine.
Yeah.
All right.
I think Kelly, she was mentioning she collects it.
I share mine because not much space to do much compost, but I stack quail compost all year, and in spring I share it.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's like gold, garden gold.
Mm-hmm.
Composted quail leavings.
That's aged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that's been about an hour. I really appreciate everybody coming in. I hope this was useful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, or at least entertaining. I don't know, one or the other, or maybe both. A little bit from here, a little bit from there.
Yeah, if you're new to our channel and you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe and like the video, ask us a question, let us know what you're doing, what you've implemented or maybe started with. Did you start with a single animal? Did you start with gardening? That sort of thing.
I never even mentioned aquaponics. Oh well,
Yeah,
we'll do that next time.
definitely another level.
Yeah, guys, much appreciated. Really, like I said, the goal of these videos isn't to be internet famous. It's to really teach and encourage people. And hopefully, like I said, if one human being's life is improved by my actions throughout the entirety of my own, then it was worth it. I hope that makes some sense. Because I believe, and I said this before, each of you guys, as human beings, we're infinitely valuable. Okay? And think about it like if you have kids, how much do you love your kids? More than anything. How valuable are they? They're infinitely valuable. Well, why don't you possess the same value? Of course you do. Okay? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, that's that. All right, friends. It's been real. I'm going to go pet my pig goodnight and probably clean the kitchen. I'm reaching up to press buy.
Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, we'll see you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.